I'd like to take a moment to share with you what I thought was a solid conversation with a set of new clients. It's my hope that what I shared with them is a help to you, the way it was to them. She's 32, he's 35. They have been married for 4 years. They have one child. They came to me because they said that the last 2 years have been filled with what they call incredible years of toxicity. I said, what do you mean? She chimed in and said, Doc, he has been verbally abusive to me on levels that are beyond explanation, to the point where I really at one point felt like I was having anxiety attacks because of the way that he would come down on her about different things. I said, sir, is this true? He said, yes, sir, it is. I have had some problems with my anger and my temper and my emotions in the past, and I recognize the damage that is done to my wife, and I do want to try to make it better. She then interjected and said, well, Doc, when it started about 2 years ago, I told him he needed to get some help, and he refused to get help. He refused to get help over the next 2 years, and it wasn't until a few months ago where I said to him, I'm going to leave this marriage. I'm not going to continue to put up with this. I'm not going to continue to stand for this. And you refuse to get help. You refuse to be honest about how you're showing up in this space. And she said to me, she said, Doc, I'm not perfect, but I am far from abusive to him. And I had to realize that I wasn't the cause of him having the temper and the anger problems that he has. I said, sir, do you agree with that statement? He said, I do. He said, I do believe that it was my fault in terms of my anger, my temper. I appreciate her saying she's, not flawless, but that doesn't give any excuse or rhyme or reason for me to do the things that I've been doing in terms of just being so harsh towards her. I said, well, I appreciate you being honest and admitting that, just because she has done wrong, it doesn't mean that your wrong makes it all right. And I appreciate that. I said, sir, where do you think this anger and stuff is coming from? And he said, I'm not quite sure. He said, she's been talking about his wife, has been following my work for some time. And he really hasn't been interested in counseling, but he agreed to meet with me because he wants to save his marriage. And he said, after looking at a couple of videos, I felt like after she recommended you, I felt like you could help us. I said to him, okay. I looked at her and I said, man, what's your goal for these sessions? She said, Doc, honestly, I like to fix the marriage, but it's going to sound weird, but I need to fix my pain too. And I'm wondering if I can fix my pain and fix the marriage at the same time when he won't change. I said, ma'am, I'm wondering that too, but let me commend you. I've never had anybody explain so concisely what I've taught so many people around the world to understand, that it's hard to repair anything in a space where that dysfunction is still present, and it is connected to people who are moving with a complete lack of self-awareness that they're responsible for the dysfunction that's taking place. I said, to put this simply, it's hard to heal where you've been hurt. And a lot of people don't realize that. One of the reasons why it is so hard is because it becomes harder when people don't own their responsibility for the hurt. She said, I get that. And, I said to him, now that he's saying he wants to fix things, and now that he wants to talk to you, and now that he wants to do all of this stuff, I'm saying to him, I want the marriage to be fixed, but I just feel like I'm in so much pain that I need to fix me too, or else I don't even know how I can move beyond this. I said, sir, is this true? He said, yes, sir, it is. She said that. I said, and you are again saying to me, you are here for what reason? I want to make sure I'm clear. He said, because, I believe you can help us save this marriage. I really do believe that you can help us. I looked both of them in the face. I said, sir, ma'am, if you guys are here for me to fix your marriage, then it will not work. My job is not to fix anybody's marriage. Besides the fact that I'm not a relationship guru or any of that stuff, my job is not to fix anybody's marriage. My job is to help you get to a place where you fix you. And then anything that you're connected to, up to and including being married and being a parent, should by default start to get better when you work on yourself. I said, but when people come to me because they want me to fix their marriage, they're using me as a means to an end. I said, do you all know what that means? He said, yes, sir. She said, I do. I said, so when you use anything as a means to an end, you don't really like the means. You just want the end. I said, so when people come to me and they want counseling or coaching, but they want it so that they can save their marriage. They really don't want this. They really just want their marriage. And I said, and what's the problem with that? I said, I'll tell you that if you come to me to just get something, that when that something goes away, because eventually it will, one way or the other, and you have not changed, grown, or evolved, you're going to revert back to what? She said, he's going to go right back to what he's always been. And she said, Doc, this is what I've been trying to argue, but I did not know how to explain it that way. I said, well, let me just put it even more plain. I said, I recommend to you both that you get separated. She started to tear up on the call and cry. He just looked kind of stoically. I said, sir, what's wrong with that suggestion? He said, Doc, I don't want to lose my wife. I don't understand why we can't fix this together. I said, well, you can fix anything together when two people are willing to do the work. But the problem is you spent the last 2 years not wanting to do the work. And now that you've been threatened to be left, you want to do the work. But the problem is trust has been breached so bad that she doesn't trust if you not only want to do the work, she also doesn't trust that you don't want to do the work for what? He said, the right reason. I said, so, sir, what's the problem with separation? I didn't say divorce. He said, because I don't want to lose my wife. I said, but you didn't listen to what I just said. He said, the reality is people get separated or fear separation for a reason that you're not mentioning. You're not only afraid that you might lose your wife, you fear separation because deep down inside, you know you're not committed to doing this work. Separation works. And most states honor separation here in America, honor separation because it really does give two people a chance to try to figure it out. You can save money. You can save taxpayer money. You save a lot of money by just trying to figure this out. I said, but people who are in marriage situations with a spouse who doesn't want to leave them, wants to save the marriage, but wants to work on themselves, and you see that as a threat to ending your marriage, it is because you know deep down inside that not only might you lose your partner, you know deep down inside, sir, you're not going to do the work. She said, well, Doc, this gets complicated. I said, how? She said, because, over the last couple of weeks, he's been saying we need to spend time with each other. We're going to work it out together. And we got all these problems, but we've hung out. We've been having sex. We haven't been sleeping with each other over the last 8 months. And so over the last couple of weeks, we've done it several times, and he's been throwing it up in my face. See, this is like good times. Everything's going to be fine. And she said, I've done it because I love him, but this just doesn't feel right. I said, do either one of you watch sports? I said, we do. We watch baseball and basketball and football. I said, who's your favorite basketball player? They said, Kobe Bryant. I said, really? I said, did you know he had a monument? They said, we did. I said, have you seen the monument? He said, I haven't seen it. But she said, yeah, I have. She went out on a trip out there to see some of her relatives. And they went to a Lakers game, and she actually had a chance to see the statue. I said, perfect. I said, what happens when a monument becomes an altar? She said, what do you mean? I said, what happens when a monument becomes an altar? She said, I'm not sure, Doc. I said, sir, do you know? He said, I don't. I said, what happens is monuments remind us of the past, and altars are where we worship. So when you worship the past, what ends up happening? He says, you get stuck in it. I said, exactly. I said, and as a Lakers fan, as much as I liked Kobe Bryant and admired his game, I can go to that monument and visit that monument every single day. I said, what ain't coming back? She said, Kobe Bryant. I said, this is what happens when we function in nostalgia. When we function in nostalgia, nostalgia then becomes an enemy to clarity. And so if you guys know you've been having problems, but the last couple of weeks you've been acting like you haven't because you've been holding on to good times from the past, you've attempted to make the past a monument. And in worshiping the past, you've missed clarity because you've been focused on nostalgia. The best thing that both of you could do if you want to salvage this marriage is to get separated. If you get separated and you go your own separate ways and you begin to work on yourselves and really honestly do the work, you can perhaps come back together with a clear mind. Why? Because the work isn't going to be connected to a monument. The past years of good times, the past years of good experiences, the past times of good things that have occurred. If you separate and do the work, moving forward is going to be connected to what? She said, the work that we're doing right now. And she said, Doc, I have not been able to explain that, but that's all I was getting at when I said, I need to fix my pain too. I need to feel like I'm in a right position to be able to evaluate this right. I said, he does too. But the problem is he's doing this as a means to an end. And as long as, sir, you continue to see me or anybody else as a means to get something back, and you continue to function with your partner in nostalgia, only focusing on the good times from the past, trying to recreate the past good times in the present without addressing the issues, then nostalgia becomes an enemy to your clarity, because you've taken a monument and you have created it and converted it to an altar. They were both very grateful for the conversation. He was a little hesitant at first to not only speak with me, but even have me share the conversation. But then he finally agreed, because in the process of this call, he said, Doc, I didn't even really think I would like talking to you. But this conversation did make me realize that I've got to do a better job of focusing on myself. And I said to him, separation is designed for you to become the best version of you, so that when you reunite with your partner, they get the best version of you and not the version they had in the past, because the version in the past isn't working right now. I hope this conversation made sense. If you did, type church in the comments with 3 R's. And then remember, you've got 2 jobs. 1, be better today than what you were yesterday. And 2, don't forget what I told you.
What's up, everybody? This is Dr. Zeb. Listen, I've been dying to make this announcement for a very long time now, and I'm pleased to say that Inspire Nation has officially launched. Yes, we finally got a Facebook and YouTube community group where we're going to have exclusive content, exclusive shorts, exclusive discussion prompts, where we're going to engage with other people literally around the world who are on the same healing journey that we're on. I need you to go find these pages right now on Facebook and YouTube. Inspire Nation, follow the page, join the group, introduce yourself, and be prepared to link up with literally thousands of people around the world who are on the same healing journey, who are looking for the same resources, and who want to also be surrounded with other like-minded individuals who are growing in the same direction as you are. I'm so excited about this because it's the beginning of some great things I can't talk about right now. Listen, you got 2 jobs. 1, be better today than what you were yesterday. And 2, don't forget what I told you.